Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to another episode of WTF What's the Frequency? And thank you so much for joining us again. Thank you to all my lovely subscribers, and thank you to everybody who viewed all my episodes. I am so grateful to you. Now, WTF What's the Frequency is really about exploring, educating, and expanding our minds, looking at how we can engage with vibrational frequencies to heal ourselves, to heal people around us, and animals as well. And today I've got a very exciting guest, Kristen Langan, who uses Reiki to heal the ailments of horses. And she uses energy healing and muscle healing to really establish what's wrong with them and to quickly move the negative energy out of their bodies and to replace it with positive energy, thus returning them to wellness. Isn't that amazing? So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Kristen Langan to WTF What's the Frequency? Hi there, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you? Thank you so much for having me today. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure to have you on the show and talk about horse whispering because a lot of people might not know this, but I actually live near the International UK Centre of Horse Racing, Newmarket, which is famous for some of the historical breeding lines, really. And so racing and all things horses are of great interest to me. So I want to jump straight in and ask you, how on earth did you make the transition from being an ABC reporter at the White House to becoming a horse whisperer? I mean, what happened there?
Well, that was definitely many, many moons ago. I was working not in front of the camera as a reporter, but behind the scenes as a production assistant. But life from there moved in many different directions, as all of our lives tend to do most of the
Sorry,
time.
can I just interrupt you just for a second? Because there'll be loads of people that want to ask this, I'm sure. What's it like working at the White House with presidents and all those important people?
It
Is it
is.
great or is it stress?
It's definitely stress if you're working in the news industry. I can't speak to the government side of things, but it's definitely stress because you always want to have the next story out before it even happens. And so you really have to be on top of your game, bringing that information to your news desk and your editor that evening. So it's exciting, but there's definitely a lot of pressure when you're there to do a job.
Interesting, interesting. And what's it like inside? You know, is it really posh? Is it grand?
Well, I wasn't in, the West Wing or anything like that. I was in the newsroom that you see on TV, which is much smaller than you would actually believe it to be. It's not as large as it appears to be. So
Because
all
it
the
looks massive on the screen. It's huge. You think, wow, what a huge newsroom. So American. Everything's bigger.
Yeah, no, it's smaller than you'd imagine, and it's a lot of people running in a million different directions, again, all trying to get that story out as fast as possible. So, when I was there, I can't speak to current times, but when I was there, everyone was very kind to me, even from different news channels, very helpful since I was new, and I really appreciated that.
Oh, that's lovely to hear because, you know, we always imagine journalism being a bit cutthroat, really. So, what happened to make you make this huge jump? Because, you know, your production's really stressful. I've got a daughter that works in film and she's done her time in production and she won't be going back there, according to her. It's just too much stress. But, you know, it's a big leap, isn't it? Big change. What happened?
It was a change. I mean, I decided the direction of being in any sort of communications or mass media at that time wasn't, I was a little burnt out from that experience. So my change in direction went into more of an education base. And then from there, I opened my own food business. And that from that food business is where I transitioned into where I am now.
Excellent. So, what sort of food business was it?
It was called Kiki's Spreads. It was a chickpea based 3 flavor spread, which was really healthy for you. It not only delicious and filling, but you didn't have to have no guilt around eating it. So it was good for you as well.
Excellent. Well, I love a chickpea. I love curry, so I'm always, down clearing the shelves at the supermarket, really.
That's right.
Because they are just so good for you. You can eat loads of them, and you
Mm.
know, they are non-guilty, aren't they? Which is marvelous. I like it as a yin and yang to my consumption of large family-sized chocolate bars. I think it balances the
It
frequency.
is. It's a great balance, and it was a great it was a great time for me doing that for 9 years. And it's an interesting, another sort of stressful, now that I think about it, place to put yourself when you're doing it all yourself. I eventually did have a co-packaging facility making my recipe and shipping my recipe for me, but I did all the other things. So I really dove into social media 9, 10 years ago when everything was just sort of growing, and being on that other side of things, realizing what a powerhouse that could be behind a business. I learned as much as I could. But when I got to a certain point with starting my journey into the Reiki world, into energy work, I really had to make a decision of, was this still the right fit for me, the food industry? And it came to the place where I decided it wasn't, and I made a huge. That's where I made the big pivot into what I'm doing now.
Well,
And
I'm laughing because when I told my friends that I was going to stop being a businesswoman, and give up being in fit out and interior design and resign from all the boards that I was on for development of the city and all the rest of it, and become a healer, they thought I was insane.
Mhm.
Somebody said to me, "Do you think you might need some counselling, B?" You know, because it is, even if it was 10 years ago, it was a huge leap because it wasn't as on trend as it is now, is it?
Right.
Was
No,
it, rather?
no, because pivoting, especially into different avenues of work that people aren't as well versed in, makes other people nervous. But
Mm.
you can't really decide your fate based on the fear of other people. So I think that I knew there was a lot of hesitation around my decision to do this, but I knew it was the right path for me. So I continued forward.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because once you've made the decision, even though you get drawn back, don't you, and it's quite interesting, really, because as you decide to go, it's what happened to me, big opportunities, fantastic jobs kept coming forward. And I was like almost tempted. But I'd get 15 minutes into an interview or conversation, say, my heart would sink. And the only thing that would make it rise was thinking about working as a healer. So it was like, well, if my body's telling me, physically that I need
Mhm.
to take a new path and I've got to do it, is that what happened to you? Was it a similar
I
thing?
I think that maybe unbeknownst to me at the time, because now I talk so much about trusting your body knows before your mind will, that we can logic ourselves through life, but that doesn't mean it's always the right answer for us. So trusting your actual body, or being still enough to hear what your body has to say. I think I was operating on that and I didn't know at the time, but really that's what it felt like. It felt almost like being sort of capped, like, pigeonholed into like a room and you couldn't get out, when I thought about continuing on in one direction. But when I thought about this other direction, it felt more freeing, and it felt like it was the right path for me. So maybe
Yeah, I think,
at
no,
the
it's
time, yeah.
interesting though, isn't it? Because we all have this innate sense, but we've been taught not to listen to it. We've
Right.
been taught to use this, but this lies to us all the time and says
Really
you can't
does.
be fearful. Oh, it's not something you've done before. And now I've mastered that, if you will. I still have the odd moment, but like anybody does.
Yeah.
But I look at things that would have terrified me in the past as now as really exciting. Can't wait. So presenting to a board of 12 men. Well, I might have seemed very confident. Before I went in, my knees were knocking together, my palms were sweating. I was a little bit intimidated, to say the least.
Mhm.
Now, I think, fantastic, bring it on, how exciting.
Right.
It's that, and it is that listen to your body, but also
Mhm.
get rid of the fear. So how did you get rid of the fear? Because it's biggie, isn't it?
Well, I think what I realized a little bit at the time was that my fear was really the fears of everyone sort of putting their own fear on me. So I had to kind of ignore the helpful suggestions I was getting from friends and family and move forward. I think the fear was there when I started the food business. The fear, I've never really done things that weren't, that there was no fear around. So I was sort of used to living in that it might not work world and see what happens. Because if it doesn't work, whatever it is for you, it doesn't mean that that's over. That failure was unsuccessful. I always feel like you're failing up. You can't
I love that. Yeah,
fail
failing up.
backwards, right? So I thought, yeah, this is a scary place to be. This is a huge pivot. You're leaving everything you know. You're leaving behind everything people know you for. I think the one of the hardest things for me at the time when I dissolved the food business was it had become so much a part of my personality that I thought, like, who am I without this? There was that moment of
Quite interesting, isn't it, that you said that? Because when I stopped being the sales director of my company, I was like, who am I? I've been so wrapped up in working 95% of my time, 14-hour days, juggling my children, all the rest of it.
Mhm.
Without that, who on earth am I? I don't know anymore. And it's a real vulnerable place, isn't it? Where you can either be frightened or think, well, I need to find out. So I'm just going to step forward and be honest. And if you can put the ego to that, I find, then
Mhm.
it makes life a bit easier, doesn't it? What was
I
your
think
experience?
I think so. I feel like, I definitely struggled with that for a few weeks to saying, even though I was feeling very strongly about the decision to move in a different direction, I struggled for a few weeks saying, well, who are you though now? How do you redefine yourself? But then I had to start thinking about, well, it's not what I do that defines who I am. So there was this just a brief, I felt like a brief education for self around the fact that my job doesn't define my worth or who I am or my value. And then I was able to sort of disconnect from that feeling and move really 100% into the new avenue that I was traveling. And interestingly, it's an avenue that's filled with less stress and more ease. But because we are so conditioned that you're only valuable if you're producing or if you executing huge goals, that's the only time that you're really showing your value. In the place that I'm in, it's all about ease and patience and taking time with people or with horses. So not all of my things can steamroll ahead. That's not really how it works. And I find the slower you are at so many things in life, the better.
It is. It's a really interesting frequency switch up, isn't it? Because
Mhm.
people always say, I'm going to switch up a gear. I'm going to go up a couple of percentage. I'm going to blah, 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 blah. And it's all very aggressive almost, isn't it? Whereas people I work with now when I'm working on projects, we're very gentle. We allow patience. We allow for the right who's to come along. We never ask how we're going to do something. It's like, who do we need to bring on board?
Mhm.
So tell me, how did you get introduced to Reiki?
Hmm. I well, in that transition time when I had begun to think about shifting out of the food world, I had had my first Reiki session. And it was in during the session and after that I was able to find the most clarity. I was also struggling with some difficult friendship dynamics at the time and different relationship dynamics. And it was in the during and post session that I found so much of my anxiety and stress had decreased that I was able to more clearly focus on what I needed to dive into myself more, where my next decisions were coming from. And having that clarity, I was like, wait a second, this is very new to me. And I wanted to learn more about it. And it was in just those first few times I had a session that I decided. It was a pretty quick decision just to say that I felt if people can feel this good and guilt free from a food product, I would much rather bring them something that they could feel good and guilt free about in their whole life.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because sadly, in our business, there are a lot of theatrical people who prey on the vulnerable. And I think it's such a discredit to those of us that really are here to serve and deliver results over and over again in terms of getting people out of anxiety, depression, fear, all those sorts of things. And we do it very quickly. But what's lovely to hear you say is, went to a healer and you immediately felt the benefits. And that's what my clients say. It's like, wow, I could really feel the energy moving. And after 3 days, wow, and I think that's what I like to think about the business that we're in, because it is the business of wow, isn't it? Look what we can do. It's beyond people's expectation. So you obviously started practicing on other people very successfully. What led you onto animals, and in particular horses?
This story is pretty funny. So in 2020, when we were all sitting home doing a myriad of things, I decided to make a vision board. And it had a lot to do with my food business. I still have the vision board. It's actually to my left right now. But a lot of it had to do with the food business in different aspects of my life, but it was all very agenda driven. The things I had cut out of magazines or, drew myself and put on this vision board. And there was one picture that had no agenda that I just cut out that I really thought was just a great photo. And I put it on the vision board. Fast forward to today, 3 years later, that picture that had no agenda tied to it was a picture of a horse. So I think that goes to say that sometimes when you have an agenda, it doesn't really always work out. You have to leave room for magic to happen. But I also think that I don't. I think that there was not necessarily a call to them. Maybe somehow they spoke to me in a different way. But I woke up one morning and I just decided that I had to work with horses. It wasn't something I thought, oh, I really want to do this. It was a have to moment. And so I went and I called someone who has horses and I said, I'd like to do a session on your horse. And they said, oh, okay, that sounds great. And ever since then, that's been a big part of my practice.
Wow, and it's what I love about the horse industry is that they are so tuned into nature that actually healing and things like that aren't alien to them. I mean, in Newmarket, they have horse whisperers come in to talk to particularly difficult racehorses. And I know you're involved in that industry because racehorses can be very feisty, can't they? Quite erratic and a bit scary. I mean, I've been cornered by one in a stable before, sort of 17 hands high. It's a bit scary, isn't it, really?
They are. And I think it keeps you very aware of your sort of small existence in a moment. But the beauty of horses, I think that it's a little bit different with my human clients, is that horses don't have ego. Horses are so in tune with nature and they are really in tune with vibration, frequency. They pick up on how you're feeling and vice versa. If you're quiet enough, you can hear them. And I think because we have language as humans and we use that language to cover up a lot of the times what we're feeling. The difference with horses is that they don't have that same kind of language. So they are so, and their existence depends upon being able to tune into, is this a threat or is this not a threat? And I think the beauty of working with them is to the presence it brings for not only me. I mean, selfishly, it's some of my favorite sessions are with them, but it's the presence that it brings, but also seeing how when you break everything down to just the frequency and the energy of things, when you break everything down to just being present with something else other than yourself, there's so much connection that goes on. And in that connection, that builds trust. And once there's that trust, then if it's Reiki, if it's body works inside you both, it comes much more easily. Things move much more easily. So they really are an invitation to come back into the present moment.
I really like that because I always enjoy my time with horses and I get a great deal of calmness from them, really. Even the ones that, I mean, I think one of the things, it's a weird thing when you're a healer, animals seem to know. And I went to my friend's the other day. She's got 5 dogs. They all came and sat on me. And I'm not particularly keen on cats, but they all come and plonk themselves on me now. And I found that horses can just sense it. And they'll just quite often, the scariest, most horrible horse that bites everybody. I'll walk in and it'll just put its head next to mine and start sort of nuzzling away. And people go, that horse is really vile. It hates everyone. And like, it's a weird thing since I've become a healer. Stop being embarrassed. Do you find the same thing?
I do. I think that cats is interesting. I'm not. I'm just not a person who has cats. I have a dog, but I find that if any barn I've gone to, they all come up to me, and it's interesting because that's never really been the case before.
No, it wasn't with me before, and I think is it that we're at a frequency where we're tuned into the orchestra of nature, where we're very aware of it, where we're very aware that our thoughts and our emotions, and our ego in particular, can denote our future. And that could be full of fear if that's where we're coming from. So it's interesting. So talk to me about a session with a horse. What does that look like? What do you do? How long does it last?
Sure. Well, I mean, they all last different times, especially if it's the first time. I kind of say, anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes, just because the horse has to get used to what I'm going to be doing to them. And since I'm doing a combination of body work and energy work, it takes
So
them.
sorry, just for our viewers, can you explain the difference? Because we're really, okay with all this, but everybody else might
No,
not.
right. So Reiki energy work would be, working with the 7 chakras. Well, horses and animals have more than the 7 that we have in our body. And basically, I like to liken energy work to a chiropractic visit. So you go to your chiropractor and they adjust your skeletal system by turning you, and I hate to say cracking because I know every chiropractor would hate for me to say that, but adjusting.
We've got a new top program in the UK. I think it's American, and it's called "What's the Crack?" And the advert's actually like, and you think, "Oh my god!" But people are addicted to it,
right? And so they adjust you, and it does make some big noises. But so they're adjusting your skeletal system and your alignment, if you will. So what Reiki practitioners do is we go in and we adjust the energy in and around your body. So if you think of a chakra point, which would be, let's say your throat chakra would be your throat. If you think of a spinning disc, and over time, our experiences, both negative and positive, adhere to us, they stick to us. And those discs slow down spinning. To be more functional energetically in your energetic body, you want them to spin at a better speed. So what I do is I clear out the congestion, and that's what the energy work portion is, by touching on different chakra points in the human or the horse. For body work for a horse is definitely different sort of manipulation. So if you think about massage, it's a little bit lighter than massage. It could be as deep as massage. It just depends on what the horse is needing that day. So that's a more of a physical body manipulation than an energetic body adjustment.
Interesting. Well, we're just going to take a quick break now from our lovely sponsors of the wonderful My Life Spring card that restructures water and make you feel calmer, restructure you actually. And then when we come back, we're going to be finding out an awful lot more about how one horse whispers. Please stay with us.
Ignite your vitality. Meet the LifeSpring Gold Card, a quantum leap in wellness. Revitalize your bioenergy, boost stamina, ease aches, and improve your mental focus. Shield yourself from electromagnetic frequencies emitted from cell phones, laptops, and other smart technologies. Restructure tap water, revitalize food, and harmonize everything around you. Elevate well-being with LifeSpring, made in the USA. Order today from vanessaelston.com.
And we're back. Thank you so much for staying with us. I'm here with the amazing Kristen Langan, and we're talking about horse whispering. And it's very, very interesting indeed. So, Kirsten, you've just been telling us what the difference is between Reiki and body work. Now tell us, how do you work with horses? What's that like? From the moment that you walk in the stable, because not everybody has experienced, walking into a yard full of horses and what the vibration of that's like. We were just talking about how connected they are to nature.
Mm.
But I think it's worth mentioning when they're not, we're in real big trouble if we want them to race, aren't we?
Yeah, when you walk in, I mean, definitely every stable has a different feeling to it. Some are definitely a little more energetic than others. The one I was in yesterday was definitely a calm stable with really nice horses. These were horsemanship horses that I was working on yesterday. And how a session starts is they let me know who I'm working on that day, and they bring them out, and we usually go into I've been lately taking them to the indoor ring. I could do them in their stall if I wanted to, but since the indoor ring is there, I figured it gives them a little more room too. And I mean, it starts off with I can't, I just have to be with them. We have to co-regulate a bit, which happens naturally when you're around horses. So the comfort and the calm people talk about by being around horses, if they're not scared of them, is that's just a co-regulation that's happening with hearts. So your heart and their heart sort of mesh. And so I
I'm
give them
sorry, can I just interrupt there? Because I haven't actually heard that before. And yet, everybody I know that works with horses is incredibly calm. So
Mhm,
you're saying the heartbeats
mhm,
match each other. That's
mhm.
fascinating.
And
Fascinating.
even in a Reiki session, after about, I think the science says, now I don't have an article to quote at the moment, but within the first 10 minutes, I believe the brain waves of both the practitioner and the receiver begin to match as well. So, I mean, energy, whether or not it feels like a fable to you hearing this, energy is very real. And the how we co-regulate is probably a, not to use the herd as because we're talking about horses, but it's as humans too. It's a tactic of not only survival but of thriving too. It feels better to be in alignment with others around you. It feels better to be co-regulating with someone else. It just something that feels good to your system. So of course it's going to do that.
It's interesting you say that because I was talking to somebody who trains Olympic athletes and also American footballers. And I said to him, how do you get your team to, when you're watching them make a play, how does this guy know that if he throws the ball, the guy behind him is going to catch it because he's going to run really fast? And has he got eyes in the back of his head? You're using special gear. What is it? And he said, no, I get them in flow and then we can go. And I just thought that's interesting. I was like, what do you mean? He said, when you're in flow, you feel the rest of the team. He said, you know where they are, you can feel them moving around you. I was
Mhm.
like, that's incredible.
And
And you're
I bet if other athletes heard that right now, they would say, yeah, that's true. Because in high, especially at the highest level, there is a flow to a team. And maybe they never thought of it in an energetic perspective before, but that is absolutely what happens.
interesting. So, when people say I have this amazing connection with horses, that's what you're talking about, that it's deeper than just I'm used to being around them. I'm
Mhm.
actually operating now at the same frequency of them. I'm almost talking to them without words.
Mhm. Yes, it happens. And it's pretty amazing and it's really calming. And I highly recommend it, to get around a horse if you can.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So, what sort of things do you deal with? What sort of ailments would these horses have that, people come to you to help assist? We can't say cure, can we? We have to say
No.
manage greater or something ridiculous like that.
Right.
Never say cure, but to all intents and purposes.
Right, alleviate some symptoms of, but I think well, they come with in any different form. So some have some maybe lameness or some other old injuries that they're recovering from, or some are they crib, so that's like they bite on things, which is not an ideal thing to have happen. And there's so many different
What
things.
about weeping? When they're sort of yearlings and they come in and they're not happy about being in a stable and they're just constantly doing this with their heads. Do you get brought in to deal with that? Because that's real anxiety, isn't it?
Right. And it's also getting used to being still. So it's them learning stillness is okay. I mean, that's more of a training perspective. I'm not a horse trainer. There's no question about that. But I think that I haven't worked on anyone that's under a yearling yet. I haven't worked on anyone that's that young, but I can say that in those horses, it's just a matter of, if you think of a toddler, right? They're sort of not, they haven't figured out how to be a human quite yet. So in the yearling's case, they haven't quite figured out how to be a horse yet, or part of the herd yet.
I like that. I like that. And of course, all of this is really relatable to people, isn't it?
Mm.
Because you've said they're operating without ego. So it must be quite easy to, with Reiki, identify the energy. Do you see it or do you feel it? I see energy. So
Well,
what do
for
you
me,
get?
it's both for me. I see it, so I know when it's definitely starts to get brighter at certain chakra points, and I'm also able to understand if there's some sort of underlying issue that they might not have thought about before. It's just a matter of listening. That's the best way I could put it, listening to the horse and being present in the space. That's why sessions can take either 60 minutes or 90 minutes. It takes a while for them to, especially if it's a first time, to open up. But yeah, I see it and I feel it. And I think that within the session, the horse begins to realize as well why I'm there. I just posted a video yesterday of, they will check in with me. So during a session, I'll move something will become alleviated and free up, which is a discomforting feeling for them because it's new. And they will turn and they will sort of check in with me and say thank you. And then I can go back to the session. So for them, it would be, for humans, the feeling of, if you had the story you kept telling yourself over and over and over again, and suddenly, let's say it was that you weren't good at typing, and all of a sudden you took that story away. Well, now you freed up all this room because you no longer are saying that story. Having that empty space where the story used to be might feel a little uncomfortable at first. It's the same thing with the horses, feeling that there's no tension or stress in a certain area, emotionally, physically. It feels a little discomforting, but then eventually they say, "Oh, okay, I can get used to this." And then they ease into it a little bit.
And it's interesting you say that they thank you because they do, don't they?
Mhm.
Horses are, when I used to work in the stables, there were certain horses, as you walked in, they'd be so pleased to see you. And when you went out, they were almost sort of like, "Oh, do you have to go?" And
Mhm.
if you gave them a paleo mint, they were always so grateful. They'd sort of rub their faces against you and what have you. Really lovely. So, do you find that a lot of what you're learning with horses is transferable to your human patients? Does it allow you to ask questions that you possibly wouldn't have thought of before?
I do, but I also think it provides me with the more that I already knew, but it sort of solidifies the knowledge that I have, that we are running so disconnected as humans, from like our head to our body. So anything below the neck, I feel like we're very disconnected from. And whereas horses are very connected to their whole being, we are very much like a neck up society. And we really have to focus more on the neck down. And I do ask people, if they say, "Oh, do you want to go?" If I said, "Do you want to go out to dinner or something?" And like, "How does that feel?" And they're like, "What do you mean? How does that feel?" I was like, "Well, how does it, do you really want to go? Do you not, are you just saying yes because it feels like what you should do?" And they get a little annoyed, but I try to, within the parameters, I think the biggest learning curve that I can bring into the human world from the horse is to reconnect the head to the heart, if anything.
Yeah, it's interesting because that keeps coming up with all our guests. Stop thinking with your head because it lies to you. Think with your heart and always ask yourself how you feel. But it's interesting. I deal with a lot of chief executives, and they're planning the whole day from 5 o'clock in the morning. It's like, get up, get on the Peloton. And while I'm on the Peloton, I can read all my emails, at the same time. And then, because I say to them, are you spending any time on being, you mentioned it earlier, being still? Oh, I've signed up for a meditation course. I'm not talking about doing anything. I'm talking about being still. And I had
Mhm.
one in particular, she was particularly difficult. And I said, I'd like to go and stare at the sea for at least 2 hours. Are you insane? 2 hours of my time staring into nothing. And I said, but when you do that, all the answers you need will come.
Mm.
They'll just drop in. Do you find that happens to you with both your healing and your life now that you're, because
I
you mentioned a
do.
bit more slowly, you're operating at a slower speed now and achieving more. It's mad, isn't it?
I do, because it's the opposite of what we've been taught. And so I think I do think that when you slow down a bit, things come with more ease instead of that white knuckle grip on life. I do believe that when you let go and surrender is hard, but when you do surrender a bit, even if it's a little bit, you'll see that things happen with more ease. You don't have to force or rush or hurry things. It does happen. People would be surprised if they just for a week said, okay, I'm going to surrender to what that lady said on that podcast, and I'm going to see what happens. That doesn't mean sit there and do nothing and think things are going to happen. It just means to slow down your mental thoughts, to slow yourself down enough to be present, and you'll see all the things that you were rushing for will still be there. You're just in a better place to receive them.
I couldn't agree more. I was laughing with somebody the other day. We did an amazing lady. She's a young, well, she's going to be a superstar pop star soon, actually. But I was talking to her about how you can just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and it doesn't happen. And the minute you can say, right, I give up, or I give it to the universe to deal with, you're quiet for a couple of days, and then serendipity turns up with it in its hand. Here you go. Here's what you wanted, or here's the person that can help you get there. But we're not taught to think like this. We're taught that, the more we put out, the more we'll get in. And I think we're at a stage in, and you must notice it with the clients coming to you. I've got people that come to me that say, I've never been anxious before, never been depressed in my life. What's going on that I feel like this? And I think it's the burnout is because we're rushed out. We've been pushing and shoving and rushing for so long and pushing against what's normal. We talked about engaging with flow. That's the one thing we haven't been doing on any level, is it? Particularly as women, because you've got to be 110% better than the boys.
Exactly. Yeah, I think proving self, that's the other thing. The tap dance to garner and hold other people's attention. But I do think when you don't tap dance, that brings more attention to you because suddenly you're still and things are happening for you. And that is a bit more of a magnetizing moment or self space to be in. Because when you don't have to say, again, you don't just sit down and do nothing and think things are going to happen. There has to be elbow grease involved. But I think what the differential is when you are, again, clinging, that feeling of clinging to things or pushing a boulder up a hill, that sort of feeling of how am I going to get this done? You could set that aside and say, if not this, then something better. And just keep that in your mind. If not this, then something better. And then you'll start to see things shift and change. And I know it sounds very difficult to believe, but you have to do it, and doing it requires surrender. So there are steps to it. It is work in a sense. So if you like work, it's a different kind of work, but it does work.
It does work. And what I've found is that if something's not right, for instance, then I'll start to feel it. So it could be the most charming person has come along with what looks like the solution to whatever I'm trying to achieve. And they're saying all the right things. They've got a shiny website and all the rest of it, but something doesn't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
I'll pull away now. Whereas in the past, I'd have just thought, oh, you're being ridiculous. You're being over the top. You're being overcautious. They've got everything to prove who they are. Whereas now, I'll just be like, no, it doesn't feel right. But I have the faith that a replacement will come along real soon with a much better version that suits my needs much better. And it was hard for me to start trusting this. It's like, but I really is it going to happen? You don't have to worry about how it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to have the vision. This is what I have a taste for happening, and then set it away. I mean, it's a very odd concept, isn't it, for people that aren't, switched on or what, we talk about people waking up. And someone said to me the other day, It sounds like you lot are asleep. You know, you're working slowly, you take a siesta in the afternoon, you don't rush about. You know, you used to be really dynamic and fast talking. I could yeah, I achieve a lot more now.
Well,
It's
I think you could, yeah, I think you could show up as different versions though. I mean, we don't all have to be one, one iteration of self. We could still be in slow moving form and still love to go out and dance at the club. We can still be in slow motion and still enjoy doing all the things we used to do. I think what happens though is uh, people like to put you in a box that feels very comfortable for them to live with. And we aren't boxes. We aren't able to be contained like that. All of us as humans, we are multi-layer, multifaceted individuals. So we could still be slow and be all the other things that we used to be, but it shows up differently.
yeah, no, I totally agree. I haven't really changed my life greatly at all. You know, I still love dancing and all those things and still do them. But in terms of when I think about something I want to achieve,
Mm.
it isn't manic in any way. It's very calm and
Mhm.
it's very fueled by imagination. You know, I see it. I I step into it and
Mhm.
try it on if you like. And think, oh, that's what that feels like. That feels great. Yeah, I definitely like that. There you go,
Mhm.
universe. That's what I like. So tell me how you manifest, because it's what people always DM me about. How do you get what you want? How do you manifest? How do
Right.
you do it?
Manifesting is difficult because we really do have to kind of take some sort of hard left turns away from telling ourselves that we don't deserve the things that we want. So it's really a matter of how it's self speak. So if you can really get away from the idea that you're not worthy of things and realize that you are worthy of all the good things that you seek, coming into that headspace alone will change dynamics around you. But manifestation, I agree with what you're saying. See it, visualize it, and feel it. You don't have to think of the steps of how to get there. I think that's, part of it. But what you want to do is, let's say you want to be an Olympian and you want to win a gold medal in javelin. I don't know, just random pick there. But what you want to do to get there is you want to feel how it will feel when you're bending down and you feel the ribbon go across your ears and onto your neck, and you feel the weight of that as you're standing on the podium. What does that person feel like? What does that elation feel like? When you tap into that feeling, and notice how specific I was. I pictured it going over your head, touching, grazing your ears, putting it down, the weight of it. You have to feel it and really, really be detailed in your imagination of it. And then when you lock into that's the feeling I want to feel, the steps to get there will follow. So I think you have to really tap into being very specific about your manifestation, because oh, I want more money. That's what I want to manifest. I hear that so much.
Oh, all the time.
Right. So, well, let's get very specific. Can you go and visualize yourself walking up to your bank and either to the machine or to a teller saying, I'd like to see my balance. And then can you see the balance? What does the balance say? How does that make you feel? What does that balance have a ripple effect? What can you turn around and go buy? You have to actually envision yourself in this life that you're trying to create. You have to picture yourself that you're already there. Because really, if you're seeking something, it's also seeking you. So being able to envision it and feel the emotion and the feeling behind it, that's where manifestation then gets a super jolt.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because, my mother is marvelous at bursting your balloon, if you will. So you'll be talking about something and she'll say, are you sure you can afford it?
Mm-hmm.
Why does that even have to come into it? It's like my vision, my dream, my aspiration is to do whatever. Oh, are you sure you can afford it? And I'm like, you just burst my balloon. You just put negative energy into the mix. I never think about being able to afford things because there's always enough.
Mm-hmm.
And as mad as it sounds to the viewers watching, I think, here she is, a bit woo-woo again. If I need a chunk of cash, I imagine having the cash I need for whatever it is, and it will just turn up. And it might be a tax rebate. It might be I've won a competition. It might be a very generous uncle. But it turns up every time, and I am never without. But we've got to stop this language of, and you're absolutely right with manifestation, worrying about how you're going to get there actually limits the manifestation. Feeling the pleasure of having achieved it is how you get it. So it's wonderful to have that backed up. All of you that think this is woo-woo, here's another person that's living proof that this is the way to go. No, it's good because I like everybody to talk about it. You know, we've had people on that have made stratospheric leaps, and it's like, how did you do that? And it was like, I never had any doubt that I'd get there. I always imagined just being there, being that. Or when I didn't have clarity, just being successful and walking tall down the street, owning everything I've got on, having previously stolen it, maybe being completely Gucci bagged up with the genuine stuff straight out the store. So it's very interesting, isn't it? But it's so against, again, what we've been taught to believe. So sadly, we're coming to the end of our time together. So what would be your top tips to our audience about life in general, what you've learned? Because you've been on an amazing journey. What would you like to share with them?
I think that one of the biggest takeaways I would say that helped me is truly to try to sit down and listen to what you really want, because you'll realize after a while you might be doing things because it makes other people happy, and then at the same time you're also trying to maybe manifest something that you secretly want. It won't work. So you have to do things that will truly make you happy, and despite how that makes other people feel. And sometimes that's a hard path to travel. But when you become genuinely happy and truly respect yourself and truly believe in yourself, it will all come around. That person or people you are trying to make happy will see how you're doing life for you and how happy you are. So it's really trying to be still to hear what it is exactly that you are desiring in order to move from that place. I think that's one of the top things.
It's really interesting because I interviewed rather a superstar DJ recently, and he was from a Nigerian family based in London. Funnily enough, we'd lived in the same area for years and knew loads of the same people. But he was saying when he went home to his parents, he wanted him to be a doctor or a dentist or whatever. He said, I'm going to be a superstar DJ. They went absolutely nuts. It's like, you can't earn any money doing that. And, he's had an amazing career traveling all around the world. It's been earned more money than, probably most doctors or dentists.
Mm-hmm.
But interestingly, it's back to fear again, isn't it? Regardless of, it's a bit of a different thing if you say, oh, do you know what, I'm going to dive off the cliff, and I've never done it before, into, how many depths of water, without any instruction, then listen to your parents and your friends. You are mad and insane, and you probably will help yourself. But if it's something that you feel as a calling, that you feel in your heart, you've really got to go for it. And the universe will take care of you, won't it? I mean, it has done with you.
Yeah, it will definitely pick you up. So it's the matter of just being quiet enough to hear what it is you truly want, and then, letting go of fear and going after it.
I love that. I love that. Stop being fearful. It's all there and the universe wants to help you. So, lovely Kirsten, where can people find you? And if I've got a horse that's got a problem, I'm booked up in advance. How long am I going to wait to get you? Where are you based? Do you travel? What can you do for us all?
Right. So I do travel. I'm based in the United States. I'm based in Vermont. So I'm in the north, almost to the top, but not quite. Maine is up there. But I do travel for horses, and people can book group sessions for me to travel to different stables. And I can either do private sessions or I can do a whole stable of horses. It all depends. And then as far as for people, and everyone can find me on Instagram. The handle is just my name. It's Kristen Langan, and you could find me there. You can book your own session if you wanted to human session with me, you could book it right there. And then with the horses, you could just, there's a place where you can reach out and we could set that up.
That's fantastic. Fantastic. And I can't thank you enough for coming on today. It's been fascinating. People don't think about, how in touch we need to be with nature. And I think what you do for a living really illuminates that we do need to reconnect with nature and the orchestra of nature's frequencies, really, to benefit ourselves and our animals, really. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's been absolutely fascinating. Everybody, you know where to find this fabulous lady. If you've got a horse that's unwell, tap in with her on Instagram. And I think you have a special offer for our viewers, don't you?
I do, yes. For everyone out there listening, if you would like to do a virtual session with me for yourself, this is for the humans out there, I'd love to give you 20% off. So if you want to direct message me on Instagram, I will give you the code there and then we can set that up for you.
Oh, that's incredibly generous. I'm sure loads of people will take you up on that offer. So make sure you DM Kristen. I've called you Kirsten twice, haven't I, during this interview? I don't apologise.
No, it's close enough. It's good. It sounded better that way.
Bless you for being so polite. Well, we've been honoured to have you here today. Thank you so much for illuminating what it is you do and how you do it. And this has been WTF, What's the Frequency? Thank you for joining in. Thank you for subscribing. And make sure you join me again next week, 8 p.m. Eastern on the Limelight Network on E360 TV. Love and light, everyone.